Hey, I'm Angelo Pinto, and welcome to Let It Rip. We're coming to you from the CUNY TV studios in the shadow of the Empire State Building in New York City. The start of 2025 comes with growing outrage over the death of a black inmate, Robert Brooks, in a New York State prison, who was brutally beaten by more than a dozen primarily white correctional officers. Many advocates have expressed concerns that what they have witnessed on the released body cam footage was a modern-day lynching. This tragedy raises concerns of a larger culture of violence within the correctional system. While Governor Kathy Hochul has moved swiftly to try to contain the fallout from the death of Mr. Robert Brooks by ordering the firing of the 14 prison workers, many have noted that Governor fell short of calling for the immediate arrest of the prison workers, sparking grounds for the lack of true accountability. Attorney General Tish James, whose office released the body cam footage and was investigating the incident in a shocking turn of events, has now recused herself, citing a conflict of interest. The Attorney General, who usually investigates the death of people who die in police custody, stated lawyers in her office were already representing 4 of the officers under investigation. Some of the guards have also been involved in previous cases of brutality lawsuits by other inmates. Now, here to share their thoughts on the tragic death of Robert Brooks and the needed steps for true prison reform is New York Assembly member Khalil Anderson, former NYPD officer and whistleblower Edwin Raymond, hip-hop social activist and co-founder of Until Freedom, Mysonne Lennon, and joining us virtually is the father of Robert Brooks, Robert Ricks. I'm Angelo Pinto, and this is Let It Rip. Mr. Ricks, we're going to start with you. So by this time, many folks have seen the video of your son, Robert Brooks, being fatally assaulted by correctional staff. Take us back to when you first saw the video and the feelings you had after watching it.
Disbelief, hurt, pain, sad, anger. At some point, it even elevated to rage. It's really undescribable after having somebody in your life for 43 years and then just to look up one day and know that they're gone. And as a father, you're unable to protect them. You know, you're unable to do anything or act in any way to protect them or to prevent this from happening. It's a gambit of different feelings. And I don't think that I've even began to scratch the surface of the things that I'm going to feel. I mean, I break out in tears randomly. I was having a meeting with my staff earlier today and just broke out in tears. It's painful. It's a real painful situation.
Khalil, the Black, Latino, and Asian Caucus has since issued a statement about the incident of Robert Brooks being murdered. What are your thoughts on the statement, and what do you think should happen with the officers?
Yeah, thank you so much, Angelo. And I think with the statement, in addition to what we released as the Black Legislative Task Force, is in line with where we need to move. One, there needs to be swift accountability, prosecution of those officers who killed this man. But I will take it a step further and say that we need to move to close Marcy Correctional Facilities so that we can send a message to the other 41 prisons that exist here in the state of New York that this type of behavior will not be accepted or tolerated.
Do you think closing Marcy would send a message that possibly other facilities should close that have similar activities happening?
Well, I'll say this. Assemblymember Eddie Gibbs, who is the first ever formally incarcerated elected official in our state, is leading on this issue. So I'm definitely following his lead. And I do think personally that it would send a message to the other facilities that this type of behavior is not okay. And we've also given the governor additional authority through the budget a year or two ago to close more facilities. So I think this would help send that message.
Do you think that Governor Hochul will do so? Do you think it's something that she thinks is viable or even wise in this moment?
No, I think that she'll have to be pushed, though. And I'm prepared to do that, as well as members of the caucus and members of the Black Task Force are looking at it strongly. And some are going to push and some are looking at it strongly, but she has to be pushed to close this facility.
So Mysonne, you've been formerly incarcerated. You spent 7 years incarcerated in New York State facilities. Is what you saw in the video with Robert Brooks something that you've seen take place before? How often does this occur? Or is this a one-time incident that we may not see again?
Well, unfortunately, this is not a one-time isolated incident. You know, these situations occur frequently in facilities such as Marcy facility. I've witnessed officers abuse power. I've witnessed them abuse prisoners just for disagreements or just because they could. You know, I say it all the time, all officers are not bad, but there are a small level of them who are, and they make it bad for the rest of them. You know, and hopefully, as we look at these situations, we start to study and see, because a lot of the inmates who are being beat, you don't hear their voices. You know, they don't get to speak out. You know, it's pretty much like a kangaroo court inside of the system. And we don't actually get to hear their voices. We got our opportunity to see what happened to Robert Brooks because we seen the video. What about the ones we don't hear?
Mm-hmm. Mr. Ricks, I want to come back to you for a moment. You got to hear what Governor Hochul said should happen, which was the firing of the officers involved. What do you think about her response, and what would you like to see happen?
I think her response was typical. I think that it's a politician thing. I definitely would like to see the officers prosecuted to the full extent of the law. They murdered my son, so I think they should be charged with murder. And I think that they should be given one of the football numbers that they give our children when they do such a crime. That's what I think should happen. But I also know that Frederick Douglass said, power concedes nothing without a demand. And if we don't demand it as a people, it's not going to happen. They're going to do what they do. They're going to sweep it under the rug and hoping that we stop marching, we stop talking, we stop demanding.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Brooks. Edwin, I want to turn to you for a moment. You're a former NYPD officer and also a whistleblower with respect to some of the things that you witnessed firsthand in the NYPD. Tell us a little bit about the culture of policing. Correction officers are also law enforcement. What are your thoughts about the culture of policing? And did what you witnessed in the video remind you of some of what you experienced as an NYPD officer as well?
Yeah, first, thanks for having this important dialogue. My years in the NYPD, I did 15 years before I retired. Even before I got there, we know policing has always had its issues. And corrections is essentially the baby brother of policing. So the law enforcement umbrella that it all falls under, when it comes to certain marginalized communities, people have been treated detrimentally. So unfortunately, it's not surprising when we see some of the issues happening in the correctional facilities. We have a lot more work to do. We incrementally get our victories, but recent events show that we have a lot more work to do.
You blew the whistle on some of the things you saw in the NYPD. You received some backlash for it. How viable do you think it is for other law enforcement folks to stand up against the culture, to stand up against some of the criminal behavior that happens there?
I mean, I refer to them as the justice-minded, justice-minded law enforcement. It's important. See, whistleblowers do two very important things. One, we confirm what's speculated, right? But the second thing is we let you know where to look that you didn't even know to look. We let you know things that you wouldn't even know to ask for. So I think as a society, we should do more to create the proper safe havens for whistleblowers, because if it wasn't career suicide to speak out, I think we would have a lot more law enforcement, justice-minded law enforcement, taking that risk. We have to make it less risky so they're not potentially burning their careers to do the right thing.
Khalil, so we saw the response from Governor Hochul, and now we see the response from AG James kind of recusing herself from the particular case. What are your thoughts on that, and do you think that hinders the opportunity for us to get some real accountability around the issue?
Yeah, initially I was shocked because I've worked with the Office of Special Investigations before. with a killing of an individual in my district in December of 2023. So initially I was shocked. I was like, is this happening again? But now I understand that there are some elements of it that need to be removed from this. And the biggest elephant in the room that has to be changed is qualified immunity. If we eliminate qualified immunity, which is the undue protection of state workers, in this case, police officers are state workers, state police, correctional officers, et cetera, shouldn't have to be represented by the Attorney General. There should be another mechanism that allows them to get representation that doesn't cost us the money. Every time there's a lawsuit against an officer who does the wrong thing, you're paying for it.
Right.
Every time that there's a training cost that comes with an officer discipline, you're paying for it. These are things that officers have to be held accountable for when they pick up that shield.
That certainly is a step in the right direction. But do you think that A.G. James should have recused herself in this incident?
I think she was handcuffed, for lack of a better terminology. But I think part of what we need to do is end qualified immunity as a part of this package. I'm not sure the particulars as to how this prosecutor got assigned.
Okay.
Very uncomfortable with the prosecutor that got assigned because he has been a stalwart against bail reform, a stalwart against criminal justice reform. This Onondaga County prosecutor, I was concerned about how that process happened, and we're looking at ways in which to clean that up so that this OSI and the AG has more power in terms of assigning folk
Gotcha.
onto these cases. But it was concerning at first.
Mr. Ricks, we're going to move to you for final thoughts. The world, in many ways, is watching what happened with your son, and now they're paying attention to what happens in the aftermath. What are your thoughts, your direction to all the folks who support what's taking place and want to see real justice and accountability for your son, Robert Brooks?
I'm going to say what I think Martin Luther King would say at this time. If he had internet and Facebook and Instagram, because the reality is we can shut this city down. What if we decided, okay, they killed Robert Brooks, they ain't making no changes, let's not go to work today. Okay, what if as a race we concluded that we were going to stick together for something and say, okay, well, what if we don't go to Walmart this week? We can shut this city down, and it's got to happen. We got to do something, because the reality is because of how this system is set up, our kids are going to go to jail. They're going to go to jail. Our fathers are going to go to jail. Our mothers are going to go to jail. What we should be securing is the fact that they go to jail, they do their time, they come home, and not at a damn body bag like my son did. That's the solution. That's the answer. And we shouldn't stop until until that solution is put in place.
We would like to thank our guest, New York Assembly Member Khalil Anderson, former NYPD officer Edwin Raymond, and co-founder of Until Freedom, Myson Lennon. And when we come back, we'll take a deeper dive into the criminal justice system, speaking with Gerard Damon, who was recently exonerated after serving 30 years in prison. I'm Angelo Pinto, and this is Let It Rip. Even in the face of damning evidence, as with Robert Brooks, there are still many naysayers when it comes to the injustices and horrors of the criminal justice system. For instance, New York State has had a tremendous amount of wrongful convictions. Over 300 people have been exonerated in New York since 1989, resulting in 3,068 years lost to wrongful convictions that we know of. Here to help us discuss how wrongful convictions fit into the discussion around the transformation of the Department of Corrections is Gerard Damon, who was recently exonerated after serving 30 years behind bars, and Fran Satal, who was sentenced to over 50 years in prison when he was only 17 years old, and who was finally released after serving 31 years behind bars, and Federico Martinez, who lost a loved one in Doc's custody this past year. Thank you all for joining. Damon, I think we're going to start with you. Tell me how it feels to be exonerated. You spent over 30 years incarcerated in New York State prisons. How did it feel when you finally were exonerated?
I mean, it felt good to know that, I was proven to be innocent. Mm-hmm. But after all those years and being brutalized, and it scarred me, the experience I've been through, it had left big scars on me. but it felt great just to know that I'm a free man now, that the world believed that I was innocent after being accused of a crime I did not commit, although I had 14 alibi witnesses to tell them that I didn't do it. I was with them in Dennisonville, Georgia.
Franz, so you spent a tremendous amount of time behind bars. When you saw the Robert Brooks video, did it remind you of some of the experiences and things you endured while incarcerated?
Yeah, it triggered something in me immediately because my first altercation with an officer, I was 18 years old. I was getting ready to turn 19, and because I wouldn't answer a question, I was jumped on. I only weighed 140 pounds. I was 5'6". I was no threat to anyone. But the icing on the cake with that was my mother came to visit me for my birthday, turned 19, and I was shackled. Shackles in front of me and shackles on my legs. And to see my mother's response, it still like bothers me to this day. I never seen my mom's like so enraged. My mother's a real quiet, well-spoken, humble lady. And for her to see her in that manner, it bothered me.
So the trauma didn't only impact you directly, but it actually had a direct impact on your family.
Yes, because so, for an example, right, what the world just witnessed, we've experienced, we've seen firsthand. There was no videos back then. So you know how it feels if you speak to an aunt and you say, well, listen, they jumped on me. It's like, so what did you do? You didn't do anything. Nobody believed that. But now now the world has seen with their own eyes what transpired. We've been crying about that for years.
Frederica, you lost a loved one behind bars, and there was no video, but you were able to know the process. Tell us a little bit about what happened and where the family is now with things.
Thank you, Angelo. It's still a really touchy topic for me. And my family, my cousin, Roy Savage, died last year, March 22nd, 2024. He, unfortunately, is not here with us to tell his story. What I can say is what I've seen firsthand, and what my cousin endured. First and foremost, I just want to tell you guys, thank God that y'all here to tell y'all story. You know, and my heart goes out to both of y'all because I can't even imagine. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
My cousin was being experimented on. Like a lot of other inmates are currently and have previously been experimented on. And it's just not something that's spoken about or people are not aware of what's going on. We were actually told that my cousin was diagnosed with cancer. There was no specific, they could never actually give us an actual, anything in paper stating what kind of cancer he had, where it came from. Nobody gave authorization for them to experiment on him with all these different drugs, medication, surgeries. And his life, he deteriorated quickly. His story started in 2007. He reached upstate in 2017. 2018, he went upstate where my God, we was not allowed to visit him. We was turned away. Me and my family went upstate time and time again and tried to visit him. They would turn us away. We went on bus rides, close to 10 hours.
So a tremendous amount of challenges.
Yeah.
Gerard, I just wanted to ask you quickly, you've been exonerated. You went through the process of getting exonerated, but during the course of that process, you still spent an extended amount of time incarcerated. Do you feel like the system has shifted enough to prevent things like that from happening again?
Not at all. It's not even scratch on the surface of what's going on, what's really going on in my community, you know? Like, it's like, I would say, like, it's in the black community, we suffer in every aspect. It's like, it's designed to put us in a box. In that box we find ourselves in, we be like, I don't want to say no curse word, but how the hell did I find myself, how can I get out of it? Because initially when I went to prison, man, my mind was like, yo, I can't do 25 years for something I didn't do. I'm going in there, I'm gonna just wild out so they let them, somebody gonna have to kill me and take me out of my misery. How do I find myself out? I don't have no money for a lawyer, for a great lawyer. If it wasn't for Ron Kobe, I probably would still be out here searching, try to find, some resolution.
So one of the challenges in the system is that representation, right?
The 18B attorneys, they're
not
really,
actually representing
they
folks.
just paying them just listen, man. They don't like your attitude, they're not taking your case.
To move those cases along.
Yeah, the 18B attorneys, for the most part, a lot of them, he could attest to that.
And Franz, of course, being incarcerated at 17 years old, what would you like to see change in the system so that way the cases that we're talking about today don't happen again, the Robert Brooks, but also the personal experiences that both of you had, and even Frederica as well?
Okay, so when you look at, and this is one of the things that bothers me, we can't buy a cigarette, right, until we're a certain age. We can't drive a car until we're a certain age. We can't buy alcohol until we're a certain age.
Can't even vote.
But you can give me a sentence of 51 years to life at 17 years old? It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. I'd like to thank our guests for joining us for this important conversation, but we'll have to end it there. When we come back, we'll speak with former host of Let It Rip, Keiru Kashiro. I'm Angelo Pinto, and this is Let It Rip. And now we are joined by Keiru Kashiro. As many know, Keiru has had the honor of hosting Let It Rip, and last year, with our senior producer, Tyreek Washington, was awarded the first Emmy nomination for the show. Keiru is now moving on to some amazing things in the legal field, and I had the pleasure of taking over as host. We wanted to publicly thank Keiru for his time well spent here as we continue to provide such important progressive commentary. Keiru, thank you for joining us.
Glad to be here, brother.
And I
Good to see
appreciate you. So, how was Let It Rip for you?
No, it was a fantastic experience, of course, with super producer Tyreek
He's a
Washington.
good guy.
We did some really amazing shows. One of my favorites was the one with regard to Israel and Palestine. We were ahead of the curve on that one. You know, a lot of the other mainstream networks were kind of hesitant to take that on.
They were tiptoeing on
There
that.
you go. We jumped right in and we had that conversation. So
Who was your favorite guest?
That's a great question. I mean, all of them were really, really good. I would say it would have to be when we had Charles Barron on. Che Ose was also really memorable. And Sandy Nurse was also really good.
A lot of great folks.
Right, and I
It
think
was
you,
me too. I
yeah,
was
you were
at
there.
one point. Do you think, I mean, as you mentioned, even the Palestine show, which is tremendously important, and like you said, many folks wouldn't touch the issue. How important are media outlets like this that are speaking to issues folks may not want to touch and really offering a very progressive and forward-thinking perspective?
Well, I think it's absolutely important. And part of the reason is that, one, we're not just a progressive show, at least now that you're taking over, but we're also looking at these issues through an African lens, right? You know, or a black lens, if you will. So the idea is that once we put these shows on and we're doing it through the lens that we're looking at it, we definitely have a different viewpoint that you're not going to get on the mainstream networks.
That's correct.
And so that's why I think this show is remarkable in that sense, because it makes clear that we're unapologetically progressive and unapologetically looking at it from an African /
So
black
Let It Rip
viewpoint.
is very different than what you find on other shows.
Oh, absolutely. And I think as you grow into this role,
Yes.
you'll notice that you're going to be doing a lot of things very differently, analyzing them very differently from how the mainstream outlets are doing it. Usually they'll go through the usual talking points, but we did a really, really great job of kind of getting granular with some of the things that we're talking about.
Where do you think Let It Rip could grow? What would you like to see happen that looks different, feels different, that takes the show to maybe even a higher level?
Well, I mean, you mentioned it earlier. We were nominated for an Emmy. I think that is actually the direction that you're going to take the show in. But also making sure that we stay true to who we are and we continue tackling the issues that some of the other folks are not tackling.
Keiru, thank you. I appreciate it.
Great to be here. Looking forward to seeing some amazing stuff from you.
I truly appreciate it. And, you know, On to the next thing. Let it rip.
go. Thank
We'll see
you.
what's in store. And stay tuned as we continue to bring you some of the best commentary on local, national, and international affairs you don't want to miss. I'm Angelo Pinto, and this is Let It Rip.